How wonderful would it be to have the peace of mind to know that when you move to a new city, that you are buying a place with a very safe investment, that you're going to a place that, although it has experienced housing increases over the last 5-7 years, it's still been pretty much with the median increases all throughout the country of top tier cities. How wonderful would it be to know that your investment year over year, even during recessions in '08, back at the last recession, still did not see price decreases, and there's no reason to expect more. How wonderful would it be to know you're not the only one trying to move here? I can tell you the top reason that every single family that I've helped move here in the years 2020, 2021, all moved here with one common denominator factor in mind. Every single one of them. Let's talk about that. And that's not changing anytime soon. So let's talk about 10 reasons that people are moving to Nashville. And let's talk about why there is no reason to expect in the foreseeable future a housing crash in the Nashville area, Nashville, Middle Tennessee area. As you know, Nashville is a 14-county area. So, whether you want to live on a 7-acre estate within 45 minutes of Nashville and have your place off the grid, or you want to be within 15 minutes of downtown Nashville, we've got a place for you in the Nashville Metro. Let's talk about why is there not going to be a housing crash? We are not in a housing bubble. Let's talk about that. See you on the other side. Hey, I'm Susan Thetford. I know you've seen enough of me, but look at the scenery. It's gorgeous. So I had to come out here. I'm taking a walk. I know you've also seen so many articles and news releases about the coming crash. And are we in a real estate bubble throughout the country, not just here in the Nashville, Middle Tennessee area? Today, I want to explore with you using analytics, using case studies, using data that comes from, not from me, but comes from realtors, comes from Case Shiller, comes from the places that study this thing. Not just the realtor that I know everybody says, of course, the realtor is going to say prices are cheap and you got to buy now. The point is, history teaches us something and the numbers don't lie. We're going to talk about the things today that I don't believe, nor does anyone else believe, for the most part, believe that Nashville is in for a housing bubble or a housing crash. Let's talk about those reasons. And the last reason, the main reason that people are moving here has nothing to do with finances, which I know will surprise you. It's also going to anger some people because I'm not supposed to say it. But the fact is, every single family that I've helped here this year have come with this commonality in mind, and that's something I love about this area. So stick with us. I'll tell you all about it. And by the way, if you like someone who will tell it to you like it is, the good, the bad, and the ugly, then I suggest you go ahead and subscribe to this show, because every single week we bring up something new, a new concept, a new conversation about Nashville, the Middle Tennessee area. I take you to different towns, different areas of Nashville, and help you determine what the right place for you, your family, your budget. And when I say family, I don't mean a wife, a husband, and 3 children. I mean, family here is the people that you know, you love, your neighbors. So don't get all ethic-y stuff on me. This isn't fair housing. This is talking about finding a place that you're going to love, to invest in, and to live your life on. Now, it's December, I think the 14th. Looks like I'm about to get rained on, but it's in the mid-60s. Perfect Nashville day, and I think I'm about to get rained on. So we're going to head inside. There is no doubt that you've been seeing all the chatter around the mainstream media and the newspapers everywhere that the United States is ready for a bubble. It's been years and years since we've had one. We're ready for a housing crash. It's gonna happen. I know you've been hearing all that chatter, but let's talk about it. Let's look at some of the factors that would say, yeah, you know what, that makes sense, other than just a feeling. Let's really talk about why it is that that may be the case. Now, you've heard about this forever too. The interest rates are at an all-time low. You can still get a 15% rate, a 15-year rate at 2.25%, and a 30-year rate at 3.25%, depending on, of course, you have to have good credits to get those. But Those are super rates, historically low rates. Now, yes, they're probably going to be going up some. Fed has actually went up a little bit today. What's going to happen is we're probably going to go 3.5. I don't think as much as 4. I've never heard anyone say they felt this, we were going as high as 4 within the next year, but rates will go higher. Will that make people flood to the market? Maybe. It often seems to do the case, but that's still super, super low. According to Case Shiller, this current year, 2021, home prices have gone up across the board throughout the United States, right about 19.5%. That's unsustainable. There's no question about it over a long, long period, but that's where it has been this year. But as we all know, markets are very local. So let's look at Nashville. The Nashville market in November, our median price was $425,000, November of 2021. And that is a 20% increase over 2020, when the median house price was right at $350,000. One of the problems with talking about a bubble is really, what does a housing bubble mean? What does a crash mean? But what does a bubble mean? A bubble means the prices have really risen really fast for no reason whatsoever. If a city or a town or a state is in a true housing bubble, as I say, the prices rise really fast, and then just as quickly overnight, it's like that bubble bursts and they fall really, really fast. We saw that a lot in 2008 time period in Las Vegas and some of the other areas where they had just massive building. But that's what a crash would be. And what that also means is it could take years to get back to where they were when they were before that bubble. And the basic principles behind that bubble was the fact that the mortgage paper, the paper that the mortgages were written on meant absolutely nothing. Basically, if you had the ability to put your X on the dotted line and could invent a job, nobody was doing verifications. They were not well-backed mortgage papers in which those loans were given. Many, many houses, whole subdivisions were supposedly built and sold, and they didn't even exist. So there's a lot of fraud involved in what happened in 2008. That's why that bubble crashed, because suddenly that house of cards fell. It's not like the Oprah situation of you get a house and you get a house. That's not where we are today. You must have good credit. They verify your income the day before closing. They make sure you still got that job. If you're moving across country, we've got to work on a pre-approval, because hopefully you are moving at least to the same type of business, if you're not still working with the same company, but the same type of business, so we can verify that you have a track record being in that business and can continue that even if you have a job here. These things are all very verified. They're solid papers that these mortgages are written on now. Totally different than the 2008 situation. Another consideration of whether we are going to hit a housing crash or a bubble, the National Association of Realtors show that the U.S. is in a 5.5 million units underbuilt for the demand. There is far more demand than there is housing for that demand by a number of 5.5 million. Now, the chief economist of Realtor.com, Danielle Hale, estimates that that's closer to 5 million. I won't argue about 500,000 homes. 5 million homes is a lot of underbuilt homes and a huge demand that just can't meet that supply. In fact, according to Hale, she says that we are going to be in an undersupply of homes, an undersupply of inventory for 5 years, even if we doubled the number of housing units that get started. We're still going to be well below that need for the next 5 years. That's kind of a key point. Low interest rates, still not going to have enough inventory to drop the pricing of housing because there's still going to be so much demand. Even if we doubled, now the problem with the fact of why don't we just build more houses? You have to invent more dirt to build the houses on. They have to be shovel ready. And supply costs, you know what's happened with that in the last year. We've got ovens and refrigerators and dishwashers and lighting sitting on boats off the coast of California. They can't be undocked. So much of the products that go into a home, into new construction, are coming from China. So we just can't get those appliances. We can't get those things. Plus, there has been estimated 27% increase in the price of the materials that are going into these homes in this last year because of those supply shortages, because of so many reasons. But a 27% increase in the materials. And then think about it. There's a shortage of labor supply, people being sick for whatever reasons, shortage of labor, that's also driving those costs up really high. So not having shovel-ready dirt and the cost of those things, we're not going to hit more inventory anytime soon. Something else that could contribute to areas finding a housing drop or lessening is the fact that people now can work in droves. They can work from anywhere. The remote work ability that COVID has taught us about the last year has made it such that many companies will allow people to work from anywhere as long as they have good internet access, right? The great rates that are so low, and people are choosing to pick up and move other places. Now, if you happen to be a place they're moving out of, you may see a drop in pricing. You may see a drop in the rate of increase of pricing as soon as that demand goes higher than the inventory. But here in Nashville, we're a place where people are moving to in droves. So again, we're back to remote work allows people to vote with their feet. And as long as they're voting with their feet and coming to a place that doesn't already have inventory, already has a very high demand for low supply, our prices is going to stay pretty consistent, if not continue to rise, I say for the near future. So all this in general was the national overview. All of what we just talked about was the national overview. Let's look at the very, very local situation here in Nashville. As you probably know from some of my other videos, there's quite a few, check out. From the other videos, you know that Nashville MSA is essentially a 14-county area. I've had people say before, you were talking about Spring Hill and that's 30 minutes away from Nashville. That's not Nashville. Well, you wouldn't know what I was talking about if I talked about these smaller towns that are outside of Nashville, but it is considered in the MSA of Nashville. It's a 14-county area. Our population of that 14-county area is right at 2 million. Nashville is the 36th largest metro area in the United States, according to the Census Bureau. The downtown Nashville area has really grown steadily in the last couple of years. 2006, there were only 2,200 inhabitants. 2020, we now have 14 long-term residents in Nashville, and actually, I'm sure that's higher. If you visited Nashville anytime recently, you might know or you might think that our state bird is the crane because there's so much construction going on all over the city. But in particular, downtown Nashville, we've got so many new high-rises of condominiums or live, play, work communities, commercial buildings. There's so much going on in and around the downtown Nashville area, down in the Gulch. Many, many places, people are moving back in, walkable neighborhoods, easy access to work, some of the city parks. Now there's groceries down there. So it gives a lot more options. We have a thriving downtown area that's residential, not just going out to the suburbs. When I'm talking to someone for the first time about their desire or their consideration of moving to the Nashville area, there's certain things that I hear over and over and over again. First of all, the weather. They like the idea of the change of seasons. They like our Southern hospitality. They love the tax advantages of having a no state income tax. Yes, we do have a sales tax that's sitting about 9.25%, I believe, but no income tax. That offsets it a lot. But most of all, and I'll touch on this a little bit later, most come up eventually because nobody really wants to say it, but their states or where they're coming from have politically left them wanting more for their future life. I'll just put it that way. I hear this consistently all the time. They're looking for a more conservative environment to grow, to work, to live. They're looking for a softer kind of community, a little more breathing room, and a little less tension. I'm happy to say that that's something they can always find here in Nashville. That better continue. These four things, just the weather, the tax advantages, the good business environment, good education, very low unemployment, and very high caliber of the employees to choose from, are some of the reasons that Oracle has recently making their move here. The national racetrack owner Speedway Metro Sports has invested heavily here in the Nashville area. We have the largest soccer specific stadium being built in the United States and is set to open in 2022. We have the Nashville Predators. We have the NFL, our football team, the Tennessee Titans, almost lost the name. Nissan, huge healthcare industry here, colleges and universities. We are not just Music City, although that's what people know us for. Music is not our main enterprise any longer. Manufacturing, healthcare, so diverse that we have an extremely low unemployment rate. These are some of the reasons that the companies are coming here, because they know that their employees either want to be here and they're picking up and leaving where they're coming from, or they know they can get here and they have a good worker pool to choose from. So why not love where you live and work? So what does all this mean about the strength of the Nashville housing market? Should you put off buying a home here in Nashville and wait for that anticipated or hoped for crash? How healthy is the Nashville market? Our sales prices are up, as we talked about. The national average of 19 to 20% in the year 2021, we are right there with it. We went up 19.5 to 24%. Depends on which location you're talking about in Nashville, but we're on par with the nation. Let's talk about inventory, because if the inventory suddenly rose, then that might mean there's at least a flattening of prices, right? Well, our construction numbers, permits is up. We have pulled 1,700 permits this year alone, which is very little. But the cost of construction to build, the cost of building is also up 27% in the year. That's talking about the materials. That is not talking about the labor to do that work. And when we have so much work going on, remember those cranes all up in the sky? There's a huge demand for labor. You know, if you don't have enough labor, that labor costs go up too. So the cost of new construction is rising precipitously. Something that might increase inventory also would be if there's a huge increase in the number of foreclosures that we had here in the city. Remember, forbearance is over for the most part. Forbearance is over, and it was thought that a whole lot of people's homes, sadly enough, would have to go into foreclosure. They'd be taken back by the bank would put them back on the market, and there'd be a whole lot more for you and I to choose from when we're buying a home. That's just not the case. Our national foreclosure rate is 0.1%. Which is significantly lower than the national average, which is 0.29%. So what that means is our home owners are not underwater on their properties, and they're not going into foreclosure, and they're not going into a bank of homes available for you and I to buy. I will say this too, though. Even if that had happened, for the most part, you have investors buying up large pools of homes, as you see in many places outside around the country. You may have heard that Zillow has decided to stop doing their iBuyer program, and they were liquidating all of their homes that they owned that were unsold. I've sold quite a few of those homes, and we bought them, working with my buyer, bought them for some cases 10 to 15% below what Zillow paid for them. But Nashville only has 80 Zillow homes, period. They are not a big owner of homes here. So as far as seeing the foreclosures go from the iBuyer system, I'm not going to see it much from the standpoint of foreclosures, because just you and I couldn't pay our payments. With a 20 to 25% increase in home values over the last 2 years alone, very few homes are underwater. So they're not coming on the market. So they're not adding to our inventory. So they are not putting a downward pressure on the demand or the prices. As I mentioned, the national unemployment rate is 4.2%, which is well below the average. And that's still high, but we're coming down from the pre-pandemic kind of numbers. What we also have is an awful lot of people who, I see a lot of help wanted signs. So we're well below that average. That's why so many companies are coming here. They see we have a good pool of employers. people wanting to work, they're highly educated. It's a great scenario for new corporations to build their businesses here in the Nashville area. They bring new people, that causes more demand, round and round in the circle. The amount that our median home price has grown is well within the norm throughout the nation. I will say that this number is not the price of the median single family home that you're going to find inside of a 30-minute ride to downtown Nashville. Now, the good thing about Nashville is most people really don't, well, a lot do, but most people really don't work all the way downtown. Look, there are business districts all over the city. So if you work or live in Spring Hill, you may work in downtown Franklin, or you may work in Cool Springs. That's Williamson County. You don't need to go all the way downtown. If you work in Mount Juliet, you may work in Mount Juliet, or you may work at Metro Center and not need to go all the way downtown. So that's why these conversations are so freaking important for you and I to determine where you're going to work, where do you think you're going to work, what do you want your kids, if you have children, what is the school situation that you want to work with. Every person has nuances to their needs and the desires. So to give you a blanket statement about Nashville is really pretty ludicrous on my side. I just want you to get a feeling of, we can work out whatever issues we've got. We just got to know what we're working with. So is the answer to move here and rent until the prices go down? Well, there is a little bit of a silver lining here. The rental prices have only gone up 7% in the last year, while home prices have gone up 19%. Now, one of the reasons for that is that when someone owns rental property, you put them under a 1 year, 2 year, sometimes 3 year lease to lock them in, because you don't want a lot of turnover in your rental units. Well, someone may be locked into a lower pricing. As the housing prices go up, our tax situation goes up, those rental prices are going to go up as well. But let's think about it. If the housing prices are going up 19% per year, and say they just go up 10% next year, how many years and how long would it take to save up the difference in that increase of home values, even if you could get a really inexpensive rent? It's just, the math just doesn't catch up. If you know you're going to be here in the Nashville area for at least 5 years, we need to find you a home. If you're going to maybe move in a year, 2 years, 3 years, we need to hold off until you know for certainty what you're doing. But if you have a long-term plan to be here, and you know you will be, it's time to find the best house we can for you, with the best rates we can get for you possibly, and the best location for you, and let that investment ride, because we're pretty darn safe. It seems to me. Tell me, what part of this do you see has a hole in it? I'd love to know. Remember that pricing always is dependent on supply and demand. If we have more people coming in and less homes, we have millennials are now moving into the buyer's market. They want to become homeowners. We have boomers like me staying in our homes longer. So we're not selling our homes so that the millennials can't buy our homes. And unless we have a lot more inventory suddenly come from somewhere, and that would be building. Well, the cost of construction is up 27%, even without talking about labor. It takes 6 months minimally. If you have shovel-ready dirt ready to build a home on, it can take 2 to 3 years to get a farm ready to be developed and homes built on it before they're ready for you and I to move into. So let's look at how many building permits there are. Remember, we were told that even if we double the number of building permits nationally, we are still at a very low supply, at least for the next 5 years. In Nashville, we have pulled 1,700 permits to build a home in 2021. Well, we only have a 1.1 month supply. So those 1,700 units with 100 people moving in a day is what we're told. I think it's slowed down somewhat. But with that many people moving in a day and already a huge demand and a 1 month supply, we're not getting into that balanced 6 month supply for quite a while in any foreseeable future that I can understand. A last statistic that I found interesting was that in 2007, if you remember, that was our last big bubble burst or big drop. And here in Nashville, we didn't see prices drop. in the in-town areas. Now, the very outlying areas, we did see maybe 2, maybe 3%, 4% drop. That was really nothing. We saw a flattening, but we didn't see drops of values in 20, 30, 40% that you saw in many areas of the country. 2007, 7% of a homeowner's take-home pay went toward debt service. In 2021, only 4% of our home income is going to pay off debt service. So you can see we as a consumer, we as people are in a better debt situation, a better financial situation, although I'm sure it doesn't feel like it with the cost of groceries so up and everything. But we are still, because we've gotten ourselves into a better financial situation on a personal level than we were back in that '08 time period. So would it make sense? Oh, I forgot. I promised to tell you the main reason that I hear for the last 15 months. And people like to talk. We get into long conversations. What are the reasons you're thinking about moving to Nashville? Tell me some of the things that have attracted you to it. Everybody talks about the weather. Everybody talks about the tax situation. Everybody talks about just wanting to get away from kind of the situation that they're in. Maybe they've outgrown whatever they're in. Every single one, even if it's a job, every single one mentions, I'm looking for a more conservative area. My area has left me politically. That's actually a quote. My area has left me politically. I was interested to see that Nashville and Knoxville, 2 cities here in the state, have been named top 10 most conservative cities of the country. Now, I'm not cities, not tiny, but I think it was over 50,000 people. Top 10 most conservative. Now, that's something that, frankly, we want to keep. That's not keeping anybody out. That's just saying that if you don't tend to be more conservative, if you tend to have a different ideologue and want to live within more less conservative principles, you might not be happy here. That's okay. I wouldn't be happy in many other places because I don't want the mountain weather. I mean, it's just everybody has their desires and their needs. Conservative principles is what people I'm hearing every single time, every conversation they're coming for. They want more breathing room. They want to not be at such a hectic pace. They don't want so many of the things. You fill in the blanks. What is it that you want to find in Nashville? I'd love to know that, actually. But every single person, to a fault, has told me, I'm looking for a more conservative area. My prayer is that when you come here, you find what you're looking for, and that we stay as a very conservative area. There are lots of places to choose from, and we want everybody to be happy in their own skin, in their own home. If I can help you in any way, give us a shout.